When Uncharted: A Lost Legacy was revealed at the E3 2016 Sony press conference, I was a little confused because I know they said they were going to do Uncharted 4 single player DLC, and I thought that's what this was. I thought it was just going to be an add-on, sort of like The Last of Us Left Behind, and that's the only thing I've got to base this off, and I never actually played The Last of Us Left Behind. So I wasn't 100% fully excited on board for Uncharted: The Lost Legacy like I am whenever a new Uncharted game gets revealed, but Uncharted 4 Thief's End was my favourite game of the year last year when it came out, so I was kind of excited for this new Uncharted 4 single player DLC. When it was revealed it was actually going to be its own brand new game, I was still a little on board, and I was excited to see what was next for the Uncharted series. So just a quick reminder that for this review I played the game entirely on Crushing, and I'm not going to mention any of the multiplayer content since it was kind of ripped straight out of Uncharted 4, but The Last of Us Lost Legacy does feature the entire multiplayer and all the add-ons from Uncharted 4, which you should buy it just for that because that's amazing. But for now, let's look at the single player for Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy takes the incredible gameplay from Uncharted 4 Thief's End and incorporates it into a new, smaller and more compact experience, focusing on two beloved supporting characters from previous games, Chloe Fraser and Nadine Ross. While the game features some small and big references to previous Uncharted games, it doesn't heavily rely on them and does a good job of distancing itself from past games to create something self-contained, and doesn't really require previous knowledge of the series.
Welcome to downtown Halabadoo. The last known resting place, the Task of Ganesh.
Spectacular.
The story itself isn't a particular highlight of the game at first. The further you play, the better it gets, and around the midway point it begins to introduce more surprises, but it takes a surprisingly long time for the story to really get going for a game so short. Whereas past Uncharted games have companions that love and support each other, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy has a very different vibe with these two neutral characters that don't particularly get along. It's a nice change of pace, and it's nice to find out about these characters' mysterious pasts.
The hell was that? I thought you were a professional.
Oh, you should relax. You'll live longer.
At first, Chloe almost feels like a clone of Nathan Drake in her abilities, wit and unbridled knowledge, but as the story grows she does more to separate herself. I kinda wish you could actually play as Nadine, as all of the game's marketing featured both characters prominently, making me think that Nadine was more than just a sidekick, which she should be. They're both side characters in previous games, so it didn't really have to be Chloe that you played as the whole time.
Nadine Ross. What a pleasant surprise.
I can't say much about the main villain. I had to actually look up his name for this review after playing the game because I'd forgotten it already. Asav ends up being a rather boring one-dimensional villain, just like Roman and Lazarevich. The Lost Legacy doesn't falter when it comes to the series' standard high level of presentation. The visuals of both the characters and the scenery always impress. If you were going to unpick the visuals, you'd be better off starting with how the character models differ from real people, as it would take less time. You can see Chloe's hair sticking to her face from the sweat. That's the gross level of realism we're talking about here. We're also treated to some of the best set pieces in the series' history, maybe not reaching the heights of Uncharted 3, but definitely better than Uncharted 4. The sound design echoes this level of realism, especially with the sound of the guns, allowing you to hear different sounds depending on how far away an enemy is. Continuing on the same note, characters won't seemingly end conversations when interrupted anymore. If you go into combat or get out of the car to explore, they all resume the conversation before they left off once they're back in the car, acknowledging the break with a little, "Where was I?" or "What was I last talking about?"
What? Pick it back up? Oh, right. How'd you get tangled up with Asav anyway?
But for me, the humorous dialogue falls flat an awful lot for an Uncharted game that usually nails that aspect.
Sit tight. Or stand. Stand tight.
The game eases you into its gameplay mechanics like it's the first Uncharted game you've played, but with non-intrusive tutorials as to not slow down veterans. It's not long before you come to the game's open driving area, which is, in my opinion, the most standout section of the whole game, and is way better than any open area in Uncharted 4. It's like a mini Breath of the Wild without the paraglider. While still being linear as everything is labelled on your map, exploration in this game is still a blast. The one main side quest is also a lot of fun and extends the length a bit, but not artificially. I definitely recommend trying to find all of the Hoysala tokens, even if you're not planning to try and 100% the game. In terms of combat, it's pretty much the same as Uncharted 4. You don't get a whole lot of ammo from pickups. You've got to be conservative and move around a lot or be stealthy. But stealth isn't always viable or the best option because of the enemy placement. You'll usually be as stealthy as you can until you have to go loud. You also can't just stay in one spot as the enemy will flank you. A flaw to this system is that it's hard to tell if you can actually get past an encounter without killing anyone. Seemingly this is never the case, as I sometimes achieved this but couldn't progress until I turned around and killed everyone. And there are times where they just spawn a ridiculous amount of enemies in a bad way. Sometimes you can even see them spawn, totally ruining the immersion. Luckily, Nadine can actually be really helpful, killing enemies or holding them up for you. It also helps that she cannot be spotted, even if she runs into the middle of enemies. Typical Naughty Dog. Climbing is made a lot less risky as your body moves as indication for where you can climb, so you're not performing leaps of faith anymore. And all of the gameplay additions from Uncharted 4 like sliding and grappling are back, making movement just as fun as in that game, which it is very much so. However, sometimes Nadine seemingly disappears during climbing sequences and just reappears out of nowhere. While reusing all of the same gameplay elements is by no means a bad thing, A Lost Legacy also has a few welcome additions to the gameplay, introducing its own features like lockpicking, which allows you to obtain some of the best weapons in the game. If you like playing risky, you can even pick locks before clearing out the enemy, which can sometimes reward you with silenced pistols, giving you an easier time. There are also secrets hidden behind destructible walls which you can blow up with RPGs, grenades and the newly introduced and very useful C4. The Lost Legacy also includes some of the best puzzles in the series. They're never too difficult that I had to look up a walkthrough or anything, but they definitely did take some thinking and patience. Following on from Uncharted 4, Uncharted A Lost Legacy definitely doesn't come close to how incredible that game was, meaning that it didn't quite meet my unrealistically lofty expectations. My main gripes with it are mostly in the story department, and while some of the combat encounters are set up incredibly well thanks to the level design and becoming increasingly difficult as you progress, some are a little too obtuse and unfair. I'm also slightly disappointed that some aspects of older Uncharted games were copied and pasted straight into this game. But when I think about the majority of my time spent with Uncharted The Lost Legacy, it was spent solving rewarding puzzles, exploring beautiful locations and having tons of fun brutally stealth killing bad guys while nervously scrambling around for more ammo. The gameplay of Uncharted The Lost Legacy remains just as fun as ever, and the new mechanics and improved open exploration sections allows it to stand apart from other games in the series. This game gets the Jamiethepayne stamp of greatness.
Not bad, Fraser.
Thanks for watching and have fun playing video games.